and gentlemen, welcome to the grand finals of the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debating Championship High School League. My name is Joo Kyung Park, this championship executive committee chair and professor at Honam University. Before we begin our finals, I'd like to congratulate both teams for coming this far. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our grand finalists. Thank you. Today we have the motion, this House would ban political opinion polls. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to the podium.
May I start? Mr. and Madam Speaker, a democracy is a system where people decide who should govern them. That is why the assessment should not be based on inaccurate information that were manipulated. And that is why, unfortunately, when the existence of opinion polls stands directly in opposition with the democratic values that we want to uphold in our society, we believe that the only way voters can be free from this prison is to be free from the shackles of questionable opinion polls. So Psy government would like to propose a simple policy that any polls of any kind to attempt to predict or displace society's opinion on upcoming elections must be banned. We see this already being implemented in more than 38 countries, including Canada, Greece, Norway, and Poland. And we want to also implement this so that we can ensure a fairer and a more better informed results of these electorates. So we have three different arguments to present in this debate. The first argument, I will be presenting how opinion polls harm the democratic process. Second argument, I'll show you how opinion polls sidelines underrepresented areas of constituencies. And third argument, my second speaker will be showing you why it discourages lesser-known politicians to challenge established ones. So let me move on to our team's first argument, how it decreases the democratic value that we want to uphold in our society. We believe that it's problematic when these polls aren't actually representative of the accurate information and are not representing the public. The reason is because we believe that, firstly, media industries cherry-pick all the right information. They cherry-pick this information that are showing only the approval of the candidate that they got funds from. And the second reason is because many of these media industries have manipulated these informations that is favorable for the candidates that they get funds from. We give you examples of CNN, where CNN is mostly focused, and CNN and MSNBC, who are focused more on democratic values and only talk about Democrats, and Fox News, which are only focused on Republican values. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, there are real-life evidences in the status quo that these media industries have funds from these candidates and have favorable information and cherry-pick them, manipulate them in the status quo. We believe that this manipulation process itself is a structural problem that we can never solve in the society. We don't want the opposition to come out irresponsibly and tell us that we can have more transparency process. Why is that? Because we believe that's a structural problem, and that firstly, people with the same political narrative, for example, if you're Democrat or Republican, only watch these news of that certain media industry. And that is why it will be very hard for them to be checked and balanced and get a transparency in the first place. Secondly, we also believe that it's a structural problem in that people believe in the name value of CNN or Fox News, that they will be transparent in the first place. Also, in the end, we believe that these media industries don't have the obligation in the first place to be transparent. If we give you examples of when CNN refused to publish the ideas of Bernie Sanders winning over Hillary Clinton because they had these certain funds from that certain candidate. And that is why when we tell you, Mr. Madam Speaker, that this is a structural problem, we believe that there are certain kinds of issues and consequences that hinders the democratic process. How does this hinder the democratic process? Let me give you 4 reasons why. Firstly, we believe that people tend to vote on more popular candidates when we see this these polling evidences. But secondly, more importantly, we believe that they urge them to not split the vote and vote for the lesser evil instead. We give you example when Bernie Sanders in the political opinion poll, when it showed out that Hillary Clinton has more possibility of winning over Donald Trump, people tried to not divide the votes between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton because they believe that voting on Hillary Clinton and not dividing the votes will have a higher possibility of them winning over Donald Trump, which is a more evil, they think. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, they voted for a person who represents him less because they wanted a person of lesser evil. We believe that is a clear problem in the democratic process. The third reason is that they have protest votes. When Al Gore was having a higher stand in this political election, people wanted to show the dissatisfaction of the Clinton and the Clinton administration, which was in the same party with Al Gore. And that is why, to show this protest vote, they actually voted for George W. Bush instead, because they thought that there was a landslide vote on Al Gore, so that Al Gore would eventually win. So they wanted to show this dissatisfaction. But in the end, Mr. Madam Speaker, George W. Bush did win. The fourth way is that they skip elections instead. We give you example of Brexit, where Brexit people under age of 20 actually didn't want to vote for Brexit to remain, because they thought that Remain will already win in the election, in the referendum, by seeing these political opinion polls. However, in the fact that in Britain, they did not have surveys in urban areas. They only had surveys from urban areas like London and Glasgow, and they did not have political opinion polls in rural areas who wanted to leave the EU. We believe that in the end, we came to eventually we came to the decision that Britain needs to leave the EU. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, when we give you this numerous cases where, because of political opinion polls, manipulated information, people's votes are being different, their decisions are being hindered, we believe that is a clear problem that we can solve. And the only policy that can solve this problem, the structural problem of manipulation of information, is to ban these political opinion polls. Because without banning,
Ma'am?
we cannot solve it anyways. But before I go on, yes, ma'am.
Isn't that problem that you just pointed out rather a problem of the media actually manipulating that polls, not an
Exactly, Ms.
inherent problem of those polls?
Exactly, Mr. Madam Speaker. That's the reason why we told you that this is a structural problem that cannot be solved by transparency issues, not be solved by transparency policies that they might come up with. We told you how this can never be solved because of the numerous reasons, such as the belief inside these belief in these media industries, such as CNN, or the structural problems where it includes people and political narrative only watching such media institutes that are going aligned with their political narrative. And that's why we believe that these are structural problems that can never be solved. That's why we need to ban these political opinion polls. So moving on to our second argument, I'm going to be presenting you that this opinion polls will sideline underrepresented states, what this argument means that when there is a state that is actually completely red or completely blue, these politicians, candidates are not willing to go to these states and then have more political campaigns. And that's why the town hall sessions will also decrease, because these candidates believe that even though they don't have political campaigns inside their state, that state will always vote for them. That state will be voting for that candidate themselves. And that is why when this diversity of issues, this diversity of political campaigns are absent under their case, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that the idea and the representation of these political candidates will also decrease. We give you example of, for example, in the Republican Party has often assumed that those states are solid red states, that they will side with Republicans no matter what political campaign that they do. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, when these Republicans or Democrats decrease their political campaigns, assuming that they will vote for them in the end of the day, we believe that that leads to an undemocratic notion that these people don't really try to actually persuade the citizens, because they don't go to these states that are assuming to be voting for them. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, when these political campaigns in the first place also did not diversify under their case with these political forms, and that political opinion forms are based on manipulated and inaccurate information, we believe that that should not be included inside a democratic nation. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, if you want a more democratic nation, if you want a more democratic procedure when it comes to voting, we believe that you should also ban the political opinion polls. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, opinion polls are integral to modern democracy. It is the only instrument voters can gauge the enthusiasm they have for their candidate. To ban such a simple instrument is equivalent to banning a form of expression of the people. To destroy that opportunity is as if you walk into a cafe and arrest anybody who discusses about politics and its effects. It is antithetical to democracy. So Side Opposition opposes the banning of political polls, but we firmly support any regulation that makes opinion polls more accurate as well as transparent. Already we believe that political parties have an incentive to make sure these polls are accurate so that they are able to use them to formulate the best campaign strategy. Polling regulation has been done effectively in the UK, where polling methodology needs to be published to the public in order to have transparency. People then can judge whether they want to trust the media outlet system by evaluating the metric themselves. In addition to that, news outlets have to make sure their sample size is big enough to make any considerable decisions for. To skew smaller sample size would mean that manipulation is involved, and these sources would be deemed as just less legitimate by society. So there are 3 arguments that will be demonstrated in this speech. Firstly, I will explain how opinion polls improve participation in a democracy. Secondly, I will show how public opinion creates accountability. And thirdly, I will show how opinion polls help candidates with a smaller campaign team. So before I go on and explain these arguments,
ma'am.
let me rebut to some points that the previous speaker talked about. So before I go on, yes, ma'am.
Please tell us how people with no expertise in politics are capable of knowing if that information is manipulated or not manipulated.
No, that is an obvious information because if you have a skewed sample, if you have like only, for instance, like 10 people that you surveyed, that is an obvious thing that you manipulated that fact. And we tell you that this transparency is always working in the UK, and the people are able to look at those transparent processes and judge whether or not that is an accurate information. And that is a true thing in the status quo. So let me rebut to some of the points that previous speaker talked about. The first point they talked about was the candidates, people vote on based on popularity. And we want to ask side government, why is that wrong to begin with? Because people have different standards when they vote, cast their vote to begin with. People want different people. And for instance, Justin Trudeau in Canada, he was not the most experienced and knowledgeable people, so that is not the reason why he was elected as the prime minister, but rather it was because he was charismatic, he was witty. People liked him for whatever reason that they attended to. And we tell you that in democracy, you have to respect that choice for whatever reason that these people use to vote for any kind of candidate, Mr. Madam Speaker. And if people like the candidate for a certain reason, and that is also the candidate's ability. And there's no such thing as a wrong reason to vote when it comes to democracy. And that is why voting based on popularity does not become any problem, especially in democracy, where we respect people's individual, independent choices. And then they also go on and talked about why polls are inaccurate and transparency measures does not work. Number one, we talk that there are already checks and balances between polls because there are so many outlets, news outlets out there, and there are so many different results from the poll existing to begin with. So it is very unlikely that you watch only one kind of news for your whole lifetime. It's not like you watch only the CNN for your whole lifetime. If you turn on the TV, then you can absolutely watch many kinds of news outlets, and that is the natural checks and balance that already exist in the status quo. But secondly, we also tell you that that's not an inherent problem of polls. Rather, the media is the manipulating fact, and that is the exact reason why we are regulating the media, and we are trying to make the process of media transparent, and that is going to work at the end of the day. And then they also go on and talk about why people vote in protest and vote in tactic votes. But rather, we tell you that that's also a choice that people make as to how they utilize their own voting right. And if people abuse their right to vote, then they're the ones who should take the full consequences of that bad decision. And we tell you that we should also respect that people's choice to how to utilize to their own voting right. And then they go on and talk about why people lose the incentive to choose the real candidate that they want, therefore representation cannot happen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not because of the poll in itself. There are several other ways like funding, media coverage, scale of campaign that enables us to determine the leading candidate. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the real solution is to actually educate these people and tell them that, hey, you know what, your vote is very valuable in democracy. Just vote, regardless of your polling, regardless of the polling data. And we tell you that that is not the inherent problem of poll to begin with. And then lastly, they argue that opinion polls will sideline underrepresented states. We tell you, number one, politicians have natural inclination to engage with many people as possible because they need many votes in order to win the election. But secondly, we also tell you that polling data is not the only way for these politicians to gain information about the voters, and that is the exact reason why this is not the problem of polls inherently. So having that settled, let's just move on to our team's first argument. Opinion polls encourage greater participation in democracy. They do so by allowing people to immediately respond to the political actions of candidates by expressing their approval or disapproval. There are times when candidates say something that is against a principle or value. Opinion polls allow people to make their statement, especially those that do not have a big voice in the media, to actually have their grievances heard. For example, during the Democratic Convention, Donald Trump attacked a Gold Star family whose son, Captain Humayun Khan, sacrificed his life for his country during his tour in Iraq. The military and their sacrifice are integral for Republicans culturally and ideologically. So that's why Republicans actually criticize Trump through polls. And polls are an outlet for the people to show their dissatisfaction to a candidate as quickly as possible. Instead of waiting until the election, pushing polls to portray that Trump is losing pushed him to cut those behaviors towards the Gold Star family and fix his behavior. Another example would be in the opposite direction. In order to nod to candidates that they like their platforms, voters could quickly participate in polls to work as an assurance to their candidates that they are getting the support needed. After the Democrat convention, Hillary Clinton's poll point rose up and defeated Trump by 9%, which is a huge bump from the previous week. Before this, Hillary's insistence on not taking up some of the Sanders pointers has harmed her in the polls. But after she promoted the integration of all policies, people showed the satisfaction by polls, and that is the point where Hillary gets the opinion of the people that the people actually like her policies. And secondly, let's move on to our team's second argument. Polls create some level of accountability. While some people may agree with the candidate they voted before, they may disagree with the details of their policies, which may result in protest votes. Polls allow people to protest without having a direct impact to the result of the election. It enables candidates to see why they are underperforming and specifically pick battles that they seem to be losing. A great example would be like the race between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. While Obama was popular, people felt that Obama's first term was disappointing, considering that he didn't fully utilize the Democrat majority in Congress to push his Affordable Care Act. So in his re-election, he was able to focus on the flaw, so that Obama using poll data and demographic to tweak his platform, and this allowed him to win the American election for the second time. That is why we go for better representation. That is why we are more than proud to oppose.
Now I'd like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to the podium.
Mr. Madam Speaker, we clearly do not see an exclusive benefit from coming from side opposition, whereas we told you humongous drawbacks by actually adopting their own policy. We told you how, firstly, it actually takes away the people's opportunity. For instance, if you're a fringe candidate, you actually lose your opportunity of politically propaganding in some forms of media or in other forms of political propaganda. Because if people are sure that you're going to lose in the candidate, then most likely the people within the political group are less likely to make you actually perform in the media, because you have to make the person that's more likely to win to participate in media and political propaganda. Secondly, we told you how the problem of protest voting, or when there is a vote, is actually a landslide. Whether you're actually perfectly sure that the candidate will win, the candidate will lose in a particular state, then the candidate do not have an incentive to take care of those kind of regions and states. So we told you how in cases where the win is actually possible, or in cases where the lose is actually 100% possible, 100% sure, then there is no political engagement and there is no political participation, because the politician does not have an incentive to listen to these people because they're so sure about the result, Mr. Madam Speaker. Now, before moving on to last substantive of team opposition, let's move on to some rebuttals for the previous speaker. First rebuttal, how they told us how we can just simply make regulation for transparency. First of all, Mr. Madam Speaker, we'd like to clarify upon why transparency and regulation cannot take place under the first step. Our Prime Minister clarified why the structural problem regarding the political polls. So what is that structural problem in the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker? We tell you, in the perspective of the politician, in the perspective of the profit-seeking media, who actually have those kind of certain political agendas, they have an inherent motivation to serve their own political agenda. Thus, politicians are more likely to manipulate the results made by the political opposed. We currently know already in the status quo, because the results by the political polls is not accurate enough, because what politicians do is not actually finding accurate result, but actually go to states that they can receive the most votes, that they can receive the most approval from, Mr. Madam Speaker. They're simply manipulating the results so that they can show to the public that they have a lot of approval rate and show them that they are the ones who should get elected, Mr. Madam Speaker. Thus, also we tell you the structural problem exists because individuals do not have expertise. Individuals do not have the capability to verify whether the information they're given by the politician, information given by that political poll is actually accurate or not, Mr. Madam Speaker. Unless you're an expert or a political expert, team opposition keeps on insisting and saying when there is less than 10% voting, people will naturally be capable
Ma'am?
of understanding, in fact, the information is inaccurate in the first place, Mr. Madam Speaker. But firstly, we tell you that people who are actually not political expertise, people who do not have those kind of political expertise, will not actually be able to aware of this inaccurate information. But second of all, we tell you that these kind of manipulation take place so that people will not actually find out very easily. We tell you, even if there is regulation in the first place, manipulation can occur very easily by the politician, because what you can do is simply go to
Ma'am?
states and only ask people that they will give you results that actually favors you and favors
Ma'am?
your own political party. Before we move on, yes, ma'am.
If people have the ability to know that the poll is manipulated, then what is the incentive for these people to manipulate like the results of it? Even
Ma'am,
if
we
people know
we
it?
never told you that people will be able to know whether the information is manipulated. We clearly told you that they cannot know the fact that there is manipulation, and that's why there's a structural problem, Madam Speaker. Secondly, regarding how it improves the participant representation. Firstly, we would like to say
Before
that
I go
what
on,
is
ma'am.
actually the exclusive benefit coming your side, because we clearly see a lot of political representation possible under the status quo. For instance, regarding political rallies, for instance, regarding petitions, and other comments on the interim, Mr. Madam Speaker. Why do you have to utilize a problem that has humongous harms, like our Prime Minister clearly clarified, when there's other alternatives that can serve the same purpose, Mr. Madam Speaker? Lastly, about how we heard from the opposition side, how there is a natural check and balance, because when people know that there is a different results from different entities and different media, they will suddenly know that it's actually that information itself is very inaccurate. We want to tell you, Mr. Mansky, to cite opposition, that people you're considering about is not the case. We tell you a lot of people, well, if you're a Republican, you're likely to only listen to news from Fox News. So once the fact is, people only hear to news that they have the same political agenda and political perspective toward. So people are only going to listen to these kind of information provided by Fox News if you're Republican, so they're less likely to actually have some kind of criticize information or actually have doubtness whether the information is accurate or not. They're likely to believe this kind of information that's given by the politician, which is more highly likely to have been manipulated by the politician or either by the entity. Having clarified upon the rebuttals, Mr. Manspeak, let's move on to last substantive of team government side. The first thing we have to acknowledge here about is that political polling is not in the first set of polls. Already established candidates are more likely to gain an upper hand in all it takes is for them to keep the momentum in order to win the election. There are several ways how to discourage newer candidates from actually extending their stay in the campaign. Firstly, due to poll numbers, candidates are often told to suspend their campaign and quit running. This creates a huge amount of pressure upon these candidates and often blamed to be the source of the party disunity and only thinning out the votes within the election. Bernie Sanders was often accused of fracturing the Democrat base because of his insistence of staying until the end. There are several reasons why telling candidates drop out of the poll numbers prior to the convention are actually detrimental to the political atmosphere. On the first of all, Mr. Madam Speaker, it actually takes away the people's choice in a primary election, which is a basic fundamental right. Especially in policies, Mr. Madam Speaker, which actually requires less party diversity. Voters will not signal whether they don't like the policies of the leading candidates, even if they were to agree with the most of them. But secondly, it actually puts them away from the political debates. The shorter their campaign is, the less likely people will discuss the candidate's platform or give them arguments credence. For instance, if you have less likely result, if you have a less likely approval from the state by the result of the political polls, then you will actually lose your opportunity for actually conducting political propaganda in media, because people within the same political group will actually pressure you so that you cannot participate in the media, because most likely political party incentive is to actually create a candidate that can win the other opposing side. But when people know the fact that you're 100% not going to win the election in the first, Mr. Madam Speaker, then there's no incentive for you to actually go as a representative of your group. They will actually rather choose a representative that can actually win the election, and he or she will be the only one to have gained the right for to participate in these media propaganda, Mr. Madam Speaker. And so we also say the second reason is why poll numbers discourage the challenge is that candidates who just joined the election will be considered as fringe candidates. This means who just joined the election can be considered as fringe candidates. This means that who just joined the election will be considered as will be actually given the chance to speak up. Even worse, news outlets can just outright deny them of the debates instead of giving them airtime. For example, in the United States, Mr. Madam Speaker, 30-party candidates only need 5% of the votes to be installed in the federal election. Yet, media outlets ask for a minimum of 15% popular vote in polls before you can be featured in the media debates, as they would not be able to attract any audience. So, despite both the Green Party and the Libertarian Party can receive enough support to be featured by these ballots, they're still denied to the access of the media, which is a crucial tool to get to the voters at the very end of the day. Effectively, third parties aren't able to beat the drop due to polling, and these are the reasons why we're very proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, we basically see that side government today is fitting democracy into a frame. We say democracy is when one person casts a vote. And whatever reason they have for making this vote, we say we must actually count those votes equally into account. And see, voting on protests or tactical voting, focusing campaigns strategically on several states, they said this is actually something problematic. But we say actually no, because there's no such thing as an illegitimate vote or a wrong vote, ladies and gentlemen. But actually, if you fail to represent yourself for whatever reason, we say that's actually your fault. That is not the fault of the political polls. And this is even more importantly, this is not even the inherent flaws of the political polls, which is why we do not see a reason why they are actually proposing this motion. Also, we do not see any kind of justification from side opposition why we should ban political polls, because they pointed out problems, but we see that these are not problems that are inherent problems of the polls, and rather it is a problem with the way the media uses it. That is what is wrong, not the polls themselves. And therefore, if we see problems, we see that the ideal way to deal with it is to improve them through regulation and actually correcting those flaws, but not to ban them, especially when we actually see actual benefits that these polls are bringing to us, such as encouraging democratic participation and creating accountability. And therefore, we again say that that side proposition misses justification of why we should be banning political polls in specifics. So now let's go through the rebuttals coming from the arguments of both sides. Now let's first go to the proposition side's arguments. Number one, they talked about how this harms the democratic process. They had several points. Number one, they talked about how we vote based on popularity, not policies. Our leader of opposition clearly explained to you why this is not a problem. No response from side proposition. And they also talked about how these polls are inaccurate, right? And we actually talked about the natural check and balance system. However, the only response they gave to us was they basically repeated the media's manipulation, and we again say that this will not happen. Why? Because we see that there are actually models working currently in the UK that are perfectly accurate and perfectly
Please, ma'am.
No, thank you, ma'am. Perfectly information that is actually given to the people in the right way. We see real-world examples in which accuracy is ensured. And we see that flaws and regulations can always be fixed, and therefore the enforcement here is the key. And we see that regulations can always be made. And also, not only the common people that they pointed out, but also the media pundits and the opposing party challenged polls if they believe that the data is skewed. And we believe, if they actually believe that these common people are so dumb to not realize skews in the data, we believe there are actually experts that are smart enough to realize what is going wrong with the data. And we believe this is enough to enforce a check and balance system in these ways. Their second argument was about basically sidelining, and we gave you two levels of integration about how polls are not the only way, but also they have a natural inclination. However, we again stress this by saying that these candidates not only care about winning. Winning is one of their goals. However, we again say that they actually care again about getting more seats in Congress for a certain area, and these actually do incentivize them to engage in areas, although they actually believe that they might surely win in those kinds of areas. They do have a motivation to do so. Now, going on to our case, we firstly talked about how this encourages greater participation, and secondly, how this creates accountability. Now, we did not see any kind of actual rebuttal coming from them, except that there are other methods. Now, we say that these polls are actually the best way. We do not see any other alternative that can actually substitute these polls in another better way. Because we basically see that these polls tell you if you act in these ways, if you actually focus on these kinds of policies and in these kinds of areas, this is the result that you will get at the end of the day. These are the most accurate and explicit way of telling candidates what their actions will result in. And therefore, we do not see any kind of better substitute or a specific substitute, real-world example, coming from side government today, and therefore we still say that our model is the best for today's motion. Now, returning to their case about their third argument when they said that basically minor candidates are underrepresented and they die out too quickly because of the poll. Number one, we say this is basically the nature of politics. Why? Because if these people don't get public support, doesn't that basically mean that the public doesn't think this issue of deserving as much as attention? We do not see the harm in this at all. We do not see any kind of explanation as to why this is exactly harmful. But secondly, we do say even if there are significant harms, other factors do tell popularity even when polls are not there. For example, no, thank you, ma'am. Let's say the media, for example. Medias care about money, right? So candidates that are more popular make more money for the media, and medias are aware of that. So basically, the media naturally focuses on candidates that generate more media attention, which is why, even without polls, we do see that these medias would naturally focus on candidates that have more such popularity, and therefore why the problem will not be eliminated even when political polls are bad. They have their own mechanism to determine the popularity of these candidates, and therefore this, again, does not stand as a justification of why we should ban these political polls in particular. Yes, ma'am.
When that attention is obtained incorrectly because of inaccurate information and manipulated information, how can you see that's fair? How can you see that's not a problem?
Ladies and gentlemen, didn't we actually very clearly tell you why this check and balance system is going to actually work out? Not because only the common people are not dumb to actually say that, oh, the CNN and Fox News are actually saying that, and not realize the discrepancy when there are actually clear differences between the information that two different medias are giving you. We say that common people are not that dumb, but again, we say that these people, these media pundits and these opposing parties, they have more than the incentive to basically say that, yes, these information is manipulated, it's skewed, if it actually is. And therefore we say that the check and balance system does work in these senses. Now we would like to go on to our third and last argument that we will be making. And this is that the opinion polls help smaller campaign teams to gain ground. This means smaller campaigns with smaller amounts of funding can selectively pick where they need to campaign. More often than not, they will pick places where they are in tight races and focus their fundings there, right? This balances the needs of those financing campaign and also their campaign strategy. So they can actually reduce the amount of time needed on fundraising and more campaign more on where it is actually crucial. We therefore say this is actually very efficient. Why? Because while in the previous argument we have given a case study about Barack Obama's re-election. Now we will give an argument about Barack Obama's campaign against John McCain as an example. In his 2008 campaign, we see that Barack Obama assembled a data team that gathers polls to figure out where he should target his campaign efforts on polling. And therefore, this allows him to target underrepresented demographics and make their votes count and feel they belong in this election. This ensured him victories in places that were actually right. And again, another example would be Bernie Sanders. He was able to keep his finances secure by campaigning in demographics where his team thinks he is losing. And when he started to realize that he isn't getting the votes of African Americans in particular, he then focused on minority issues instead of just on Wall Street. And this allowed him to stretch his campaign budget as he was not funded by big financiers. Instead, he was funded by smaller donations from the average Joe or Jane. And therefore, so not only was he able to survive with a small team, but he was also able to convince Americans that he didn't need to go for more fundraisers and still could stay away from corporate influences. Only through the power of a polling candidate like Sanders be able to selectively pick where to campaign. In short, polling allows people to figure out tight races and focus their money there instead of getting more money to spread out their campaign, therefore making democracy more efficient. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome the Government Whip to the podium.
So, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, we believe that this debate comes down to two clashes. First of all, we want to ask you the question, what kind of democracy do we want to live in? Second question that we want to ask you is what exactly is the unique characteristic of public polls, and what are the exclusive harms that we see in the motion so harmful that we need to ban them? So going on into our first clash about what kind of democracy that we want to live in. Now, the opposition side kept on mentioning and kept on emphasizing the point that we should respect the independent choices of individuals. There is no such thing as a wrong vote. There is no such thing as a wrong choice when it comes to democracy, when it comes to voting. Madam Speaker, we believe, we totally agree with that point, that there is no such thing as a wrong choice. However, we do believe that there are choices that are more beneficial for our society. We believe we want a society where not many people cast their vote upon whether or not a person is handsome, whether or not simply a person is charismatic. We believe those are very harmful for our society, and even the opposition simply cannot deny that it is a better society where people cast more votes according to appearances, according to other things other than policies. So we believe the government government does have a responsibility especially when they see exclusive harms of this certain policy called public polls, and when we see that we can take a measure and can take one step further to a better democracy where people make more choices that are actually more relevant to policies, then the government should do everything in its power to make such a society, to make a better democratic society, a society that actually represents people. Which actually leads to our second point about how we support better representation. Now, Madam Speaker, we have told you from our very first speaker why eradicating public polls leads to the better representation of people. Because we told you, especially for people who do not yet have made a decision, or even for people who make radical choices, we believe these public opinion polls, which are manipulated and do not actually reflect the exact opinions of the public in the first place, have too much of an influence on other citizens. We believe when we see phenomena such as protest votes or tactical votes, where people vote on other candidates not because they believe on their policies, but because they don't want the other candidate to win, then we cannot actually assess the exact numbers of how many people want this policy to be implemented, how many people don't like this candidate. We want a better environment, a better society where people can actually, being not influenced by what other people think, can responsibly and actually honestly cast a vote on what kind of policy that they want, not just because I don't want that person to win. We believe when more people vote according to what they believe in, according to their ideologies and what policies they like best, this actually gives a better representation of society as a whole. So going into the next point about how the opposition talked about how forcing politicians who are not popular, we told you the point where it forces politicians who are not popular in these kind of public polls to opt out of the election quickly because they are blamed for dividing the votes. We told you that this is a very harmful phenomenon that we see. Now the opposition again gave us the very irresponsible stance that this is just how politics works. This is just how things are. There is no reason for us to ban this in the first place. Now, Madam Speaker, we see that the numbers, because people are again influenced by numbers which are manipulated in the first place about what other kinds of people think, which are not correct again in the first place. When after these people are influenced, they simply blame these politicians who do not have much popularity, and these politicians with little popularity do not have a chance to open up their policies or to let the public know about their policies in the first place. This is why these politicians are not even given the choice or not even given the chance to talk about their policies in public in the first place. So we believe this is a detrimental harm because the diversity of not only politicians, but also policies decreases, and again, another harm for a democratic society, another characteristic that we don't want in our society. Going into our second class about characteristics of public polls. Again, Madam Speaker, we tell you that the benefits of these public polls are not exclusive, but the harms are. We have told you from the very beginning that there are so many other methods where politicians can reap the benefits that the opposition has talked about in this debate today. They keep on talking about how public polls allow candidates to improve their strategies, to look upon what they're doing good, what they're doing bad, so improving their strategies and looking at what people actually want. Now, Madam Speaker, we tell you now, first of all, politicians can actually now increase the actual engagement that they have with these citizens because they don't have to rely on these numbers. They don't simply have to look at these public polls. We told you that there are states that they simply skip because they're confident that that state will support them. That state will always be on their side. So they simply give up the engagement. No, thank you, ma'am. Or give up to listen to the actual opinions that these citizens have. They simply rely on these numbers. Second of all, we say that they can all simply, other than higher engagement, they can simply carry out their own fund by using their own individual funding, the funding of these candidates, to carry out their own polls. Why does it have to be these public polls? They can simply carry out surveys or other kind of polls using their own funding to assess what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. So we believe the opposition side had a burden to prove. Why especially public polls? Why not other methods such as more engagement, such as these individual polls that these candidates can carry out? Going into our last point about how kept on talking about we can have more regulations. Public polls can simply be more transparent than they are today, and these methods in which they carry out these public polls can simply be published. Now, first of all, Madam Speaker, we believe even under these regulations, according to the characteristics of public polls, these results can still be manipulated. Just because they abide by the regulations does not mean the results are not manipulative, because we believe it's so easy that these candidates can simply carry out their public polls while abiding by these such regulations. They can simply carry out these surveys, these public polls in areas or districts or states that have more supporters for that certain candidate. Then that can we actually say that that is an exact reflection, that is an exact representation of our society, of the needs of our society, what people want? We do not believe so, because there are so many ways that it can still be manipulated under these such regulations. And since they cannot prove the exclusive benefits that only public polls can carry out, Madam Speaker, we believe that the government side takes the bait. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the opposition whip to the podium.
Mr. and Madam Speakers, they're fitting democracy in a frame, in their own definition of democracy. And we don't want them to come up and set a definition of what democracy is and what type of democracy the government should enforce to these people. We want to encourage people to be more to engage in politics and to be more informed in diverse chances of information. So we want to focus on, firstly, before I move on to any clashes, that this motion is on a ban motion, meaning that they should have proved to us why poll is an exclusive thing that is actually a causation of all these problems they have meant, why these are so harmful that it overweighs all the benefits that we told you, how exclusively poll can have a benefit regarding people's participation and the natural check and balance system, whereas they did not provide any kind of exclusiveness or uniqueness. Why poll itself is the very fundamental charge of these problems, and we believe that that's the reason why they can never win this debate regarding the motion ban. But more importantly, every point lied on the stance that poll is inaccurate. That was all their premise. But since we have told you how we can solve these problems, and although it is not solved, that is better than not having polls, we believe that absolutely we take this debate home. And before lastly, moving on to our clashes, we want them to make their stance clear, because suddenly the government whips comes up and says that if public poll is not the only way, these candidates can individually fund money and make a poll. Firstly, they came up and said that they would ban every form of poll, and they just denied any kind of existence of poll. We believe that itself is a contradictory stance. But secondly, wouldn't your way of individual funding and making poll would make more room of manipulation, because that candidate itself is making the poll? We believe that they had a very wishy-washy stance. They can't take this debate home. Now, moving on to our first clash. What is true democracy? Ladies and gentlemen, the first point that they came up and told us is accuracy and manipulation. Firstly, we told you how the political experts and the opposing parties will absolutely be in charge of checking these kind of sources, whether it is manipulated or not. So absolutely, but it would be a very great natural check and balance system to check the transparency of the poll itself. And we also told you that even if the media keeps the manipulation, we see no harm from supporting certain ideology, because we told you that firstly, there are lots of channels diversified in their ideology, meaning that there are lots of, for instance, like CNN and Fox has a very different kind of ideology. They absolutely will have a different kind of ideology, meaning that even if they manipulate the resources, even if they manipulate the poll, then absolutely that itself shows a diversity in the ideology. People absolutely are informed in that case. People are not biased and swayed by a certain one, because we already have many in the society. And we even also want to tell you that even if it is wrong, manipulation is wrong, and people being swayed is wrong, we believe that banning cannot be solving the problem at all. Because anyways, these media have this certain ideology. If they do not have the chance to make polls, they will make news media. They will make more other ways to support these candidates in a different way. We believe that polls cannot be the way to solve this. And even if these manipulation system is proven that it is manipulated, if people, the civilians who watch those news, are persuaded by the ideology and they believe in it, we see no harm in it. Now, we also want to tell you that they're treating people as if they're very stupid. They don't know what kind of source they're not interested in the source of the poll. But we believe that's not the case at all. If we review reveal what kind of person were in the survey, which kind of diversified ideology, which kind of diversified people are engaged in that in that polling. We believe that people absolutely can make the informed choice. They know who participate in that polls. They know what kind of characteristic the poll can have. We believe that they cannot actually come up and say civilians simply do not know about anything. And we also want to tell you regarding about the protest voting and tactic voting, what is wrong. It's not even illegitimate, and we believe that they never gave any kind of analysis. They never engaged in our points as well. Rather, we told you that people voting who they believe in is the what they came up and told us is that people do not represent their own ideas, and that's the problem of protest voting and tactic voting. But we believe that's not the only representation that we require in today's society. Absolutely, if these people want to vote in a protest way, if these people want to vote in a different way, then absolutely that's another way of expressing their ideas. Yes, ma'am.
When these people are only looking at news that serve their own political agenda, how is the natural check and balance that you propose is possible under your model?
Firstly, that is false because people are not always looking one kind of news media. They are actually very open. And these days, medias are not only seen by TV, it's also in the internet. We can so easily approach those different kinds of ideas. But even if that is the case, if people are actually persuaded by those ideologies, we saw nothing wrong. And we also, moving back to the point, the protest voting and the tactic voting, Mr. and Madam Speakers. So we believe that if these people vote in this kind of way, if their voting way is in protest, in tactic, we believe that that's nothing wrong in the status quo. And we also want to tell you that regarding their web speech, they have came up and told us that they think they're more beneficial votes in the society. That itself is ruining the definition of democracy, Mr. and Madam Speakers. There's no such thing as more beneficial votes. There's no such thing as a right and wrong vote. And if you want to tell us that people voting someone handsome is wrong, people voting in a different way is wrong, then why won't you just take a test if these people are rational enough to vote? Why don't you test these people if they have lots of knowledge in politics? We believe that they themselves are contradicting the very definition of democracy. They can never stand in today's debate by pushing what democracy is. Now, moving on to the second clash, we will like to move on to the practical benefits. Who can better ensure a democratic society, without the poll or with the poll? We actually told you that we have the unique benefit that without the polls, these benefits will not appear in the first place. We have told you that poll is an immediate way to check people's attention, to check people's ideas and opinions in a very quick way, meaning that politicians can engage with people more easily because it's the only way people can show their opinion before the actual election, meaning that politicians can have more ways and more room to engage with these people. They have more time to fix their policies, something people do not like. We believe that these kind of responsive politics, interactive politics, is what the society really wants to pursue in today's society. That's the reason why we gave you the unique kind of benefits, why these can only be certain in our case, whereas their problem was not unique at all to the polls. Firstly, they told that the opinions poll was sidelined underrepresented states. Firstly, you don't need polling data to sideline some underrepresented states because absolutely, as you just came up and told us, that candidates do have the money, they have the fund, they have the capacity to make their own polls. If that's true, we believe that will also happen in their case without the polling data. That they will absolutely go survey people and they will have the capacity to do so. That they and if they find out that certain states are supporting them, certain states are not, then absolutely they will underrepresent, they will sideline those states as well. And we also want to tell you that this will not happen in the first place because these candidates absolutely do have the natural inclination, natural incentivization to engage with people in the first place because they cannot absolutely neglect one party or one state. So we believe that that's very natural. And regarding the point that, another second point that they gave us, that some policies are not in discussion at all and that's because of poll, no, not at all. That is a very natural consequence because if anyone has something they're interested in, not interested in, we believe that that's a very natural one. That's not something that is swayed by whether they believe in the poll or not. And because, ladies and gentlemen, in the end of the day, we can absolutely make some problems with accuracy. We can fix it. And we also want to say that even if we cannot, people already have informed choice. It is a better, unique benefit that we propose, and that's the reason why we take this debate home. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome the opposition reply to the podium.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, what is the government to say that your reason to vote is wrong? Everyone has different reasons to vote for a certain candidate. And democracy is just respecting all those different independent choices. And we believe that that is a true definition of democracy. And when side government agreed to the fact that democracy has to respect those individual choices, then the only problem from side opposition is that side government is that the decisions are made based on inaccurate information. So if we prove why polls are accurate, their whole case just does not stand in today's debate. So is poll accurate? They just simply neglected the point why polls can be accurate by simply saying that, because of the inherent characteristic of media that they have political stance, that polls can never ever be accurate, which is wrong. We had mainly two responses from the start of our leader of opposition speech to begin with. So firstly, we told you, why would they possibly manipulate when all that manipulation process is shown to the public to begin with? We told you that this process is going to be transparent under our model. Nobody's going to believe it anyways if the sample is so focused on particular states with particular ideology. People are not stupid to believe every kind of polls conducted in any region and conducted in any particular states. They don't watch, and people don't watch a single type of news for their whole lifetime, and that's simply an impossible and inaccurate characterization coming from their side. And therefore, natural checks and balance always exist, and therefore transparency measures always work. But secondly, even if that is not the case, political experts and opposing candidates and other professionals with high incentive to criticize those inaccurate polls are there to criticize those inaccuracies to begin with. And that is why, for instance, in the UK, polls accuracy and transparency measures when it comes to polling is working very accurately because it is possible, and transparency measures work. But then there was no engagement whatsoever coming from side government regarding the point that these political experts and opposing candidates have an incentive to criticize those inaccurate polls to begin with. So therefore, Mr. and Madam Speaker, simply arguing that all transparency measures can't work because media outlets are mean and media outlets have political stances, they cannot win this debate, because we already proved to you during our 3 speeches that political polls are and can be accurate at the end of the day. So therefore, all in all, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't prove any exclusive harm of the polls because, number one, they're accurate, and number two, every harms that they talked about are not caused by polls. Even without the polls, people are able to know which candidates is leading in the first place. For instance, they can look at the media attention, they can look at campaign funding, and etc. They already know those information even without polling. And that is the exact reason why people anyways are going to be influenced by these even without polls. So the harms that they talked about are not inherent values and inherent harms or unique harms of the polls to begin with. Rather, we were able to prove to you the exclusive benefits of conducting these polls. We told you that this is the most efficient and quick way to increase representation in a democratic society. And we told you that this actually increases accountability within the candidates as well. And we also told you that the small campaigns are also enabled to spread their ideology to a mass amount of people. And we tell you that that is an ultimate unique benefit that polls contribute to our society. And we tell you that that is the reason why polls have an inherent value when it comes to promoting democracy, and we go for the democracy that respects all the individual choices that these people make, unlike the government who simply does not respect the individual choices that these people make. And that is why we are more than proud to oppose. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome our last speaker, the government reply to the podium.
May I start? Mr. and Madam Speaker, please don't be deluded by the sweet rhetoric that the opposition side gave you. What they're doing in the end of the day is basically nothing. They know that there is a problem in the status quo, but they do nothing. Because they say that that is just politics. Although they know that there is an undemocratic process when it comes to choosing votes, they're saying they're going to do nothing because that's just how politics work. We're outraged by the rhetoric that the opposition side has gave us. Because at least on side proposition, at least we go for a better democracy. We do something to decrease the harms that we find in these political opinion polls. And we're going to be telling you why the harms are exclusive of political opinion polls and tell you why the benefits are not. So let me go in. So in this debate, if we just prove to you 2 things, we just win. Firstly, why manipulation itself will happen. in no matter what cases, no matter what transparency policy you have in your case. Secondly, if we prove to you that we go for a better representation. So firstly, let me prove to you why manipulation would happen. Firstly, they told us as if citizens are very intelligent, as if they know politics very, very well, and that they know which states are Republican, they know which states are Democrats in the first place. But Mr. Madam Speaker, we don't think that media industries are not that dumb. They just not go and they just not blatantly tell the public that they're Democratic or they're Republican. What they do is that they use subtle measures. They use subtle measures to cherry pick some information that are Democratic, cherry pick some information that are Republican. They just not go and announce that they're Republican, not announce that they're Democrats. And this is the reason why the citizens are getting deluded. They don't know if they're manipulating in the first place because the methodology that these media industries use itself is very, very subtle. And that's why, Mr. Madam Speaker, these people are not changing the information. They're just cherry picking some information that are only useful to them. That is the reason why it will be very hard for these citizens, these normal citizens, to have expertise and know if that is manipulated or not. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, when they're overestimating that possibility itself, we believe that they can never stand in the first place. But secondly, we believe that it's very hard for the check and balance to happen in the first place. Because imagine it, if you are a Democrat, why do you have the incentive to watch Fox News? If you're a Republican, why do you have the incentive to use CNN? Because you have a different political agenda in the first place. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, you don't want to take your time and effort to see another opposite side of your political agenda. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, when that incentive does not exist in the first place for the check and balance to happen in the first place, we believe that that check and balance you so want will not happen. And also, we told you that CNN already did this in the first place, where they cherry pick information which was favorable to Hillary Clinton rather than Bernie Sanders, and then they get it and they published out. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, this happened in a very subtle way, where a citizen doesn't know if that is true or not. We believe that this manipulation process will happen anyways under your case. You need to keep in mind that manipulation process does not happen blatantly. They just not announce that they do manipulate this information. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, you know in your hearts that these people are going to use this. They're going to use any loopholes to manipulate their information. We believe that you are getting deluded by voting for the opposition side because you know that manipulation would happen. But secondly, we believe that better representation will happen under our case because we believe that it's at least better under our side, where people in democratic values don't vote on inaccurate information. Imagine it, if in the Brexit situation, if we didn't have this political opinion poll, if we didn't tell these people under age of 20, if we didn't tell how these people that Remain will have much more votes and they will be landslided and Remain will come out in the referendum, would these people not go and vote? No, we think that if we didn't have this political opinion polls in the first place, people under age 20 would have voted to Remain. People who in urban states would have voted to Remain in the first place, which is a representation of what they want. Because these political opinion polls have loopholes on not surveying these rural areas, this is the reason why people just expected to Remain to win in these voting polls in the first place. And that is why, Mr. Madam Speaker, if we don't have this expectation in the first place that this will come out as an outcome, we believe that this will not also give an expectation for these people to do things such as protest voting or tactical voting that we told you is a clear harm in the status quo, which is undemocratic, where it's not your representation. And that is why you need to keep in mind that we're not saying that we're framing democracy, that democracy is this. We're not doing that. We're not saying that your vote is non-democratic. We believe that the problem we find here is that because of political opinion polls, because of the inaccurate information that government gives to you, citizens have no choice but to do it in an undemocratic way because they had inaccurate information in the first place. And when that is a problem we can never solve, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that you should be responsible enough to vote for a proposition where you go for better democracy rather than the irresponsible opposition. Thank you.
Very much, and this is the end of the grand finals. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me congratulating them on their successful debate with a big hand. Speakers may now cross the floor and shake hands. Thank you for your outstanding efforts, and I'm really proud of you, and then I will looking forward to seeing you serve for our nation and the world as our future leaders. And lastly, I'd like to thank our audience for your support. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
안녕하세요. 네, 지금부터 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부의 시상식을 시작하겠습니다.
We will now begin the award ceremony for the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship.
저는 본 대회의 시상식 사회를 맡고 있는 광주 영어방송의 김미경 PD고요. 제 옆은 영어 사회를 맡은 문성현입니다.
Here is Migyeong Kim from Gwangju English Broadcasting Station, who will lead you through the ceremony. And my name is Sunghyun Moon.
여러분 모두 정말 수고 많이 하셨습니다. 예선 4경기 그리고 결승 토너먼트까지 승패와 관계없이 페어 플레이를 해준 모든 참가자들에게 다시 한번 격려의 박수 부탁드립니다.
We congratulate all teams for their fair play and spirited competitiveness that has made it possible for us to run this tournament successfully.
네, 그럼 지금부터 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 고등학생부 시상식을 시작하겠습니다. 여러분 모두 시상식이 진행되는 동안 수상자들을 큰 박수로 축하해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
We will now begin the award ceremony for the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship. We would like to ask you that all members of audience recognize and applaud all awardees mentioned during the ceremony.
자, 우선 본격적인 시상에 앞서 이번 대회 심사평에 대해서 본 대회 노회원 심판장에게 들어보겠습니다. 노회원 심판장을 박수로 맞이해 주십시오.
Before handing out the awards, our chief adjudicator, Hwon Ro, will say a few words regarding the tournament. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
Hi, my name is Hwon Ro. I served as your chief adjudicator for this tournament. I'll be doing my feedback of this tournament in Korean and in English, so bear with the length here. 네, 안녕하세요. 제 이름은 노혜원이고요. 저는 이 대회 심판장을 맡았습니다. 그래서 한국어와 영어로 대회에 관한 총평을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 일단 심판장 패널에서 관리하는 분야는 크게 3가지입니다. 하나는 대회 진행, 두 번째는 심사위원의 어떤 품위 또는 능력, 그리고 마지막으로는 학생들이 토론을 하는 주제에 관련된 어떠한 구상 그리고 실행을 함께 저희가 맡아서 하고 있습니다. The Chief Adjudication Panel is in charge of largely 3 things. First of all, the quality of adjudication. Secondly, the debate topics that the students and the participants debate on. And lastly, the overall organization of this tournament. Regarding the topic, we wanted to emphasize accessibility as well as the educational value of what these students are debating about. 주제에 관련해서 저희가 특별히 신경 썼던 점은 어떠한 특별한 기관 내지는 학생들 노력 외적인 것을 많이 투자로 하는 어떤 주제라기보다는 아이들이 고등학교 과정에서 충분히 배우고 학습하고 있는 접근성이 높은 주제에 집중을 하였고요. 무엇보다 교육적인 목적으로 주최되는 대회이기 때문에 어떠한 교육적 가치에 중심을 둔 주제였습니다. 그래서 사실 고등학생들이긴 하지만 상당히 심도 있는 주제에 대해서 토론을 했었는데요. 주제의 예시로서는 문화예술, 과학, 국내 이슈, 교육, 글로벌 이슈, 경제와 노동, 그리고 마지막으로 민주주의에 대해서 토론을 하였습니다. Although these are high school students, we wanted to make sure that they were debating on relevant issues such as art and culture, science, Korea, education, global issues, labor, and most importantly, democracy. We feel that because this is the city of Gwangju, the city that represents human rights, democracy, and peace, and that this debate tournament is the perfect platform for these students to increase their abilities to engage with the rest of the world as well as their local society. 특별히 인권, 민주, 평화라는 굉장히 소중한 가치들을 대표로 하고 있는 광주광역시에서 주최하고 있는 대회이기 때문에 학생들이 더더욱이 토론을 통한 성숙한 민주 시민으로 성장하길 바라는 마음에 이러한 주제들을 선정하였습니다. 굉장히 떨리는데요. 아무튼 총평을 마지막으로 드리자면 사실 학생들이 입시제도 때문에 많이들 이런 과외 활동을 하고 있지 않는 현황입니다. 하지만 그럼에도 불구하고 토론이라는 굉장히 다이내믹한 역동적인 스포츠에 참가하기 위해 온 50명 넘는 학생들을 저희는 굉장히 멋있는 학생들이라고 생각을 하고 있고요. 그렇기 때문에 앞으로 이 친구들이 사회에 나가서 얼마나 더 멋진 일을 할지 굉장히 기대를 많이 하고 있습니다. 그만큼 성숙한 태도를 보였고 무엇보다 승패에 관련된 굉장히 멋진 스포츠맨십을 보여주는 대회였습니다. 그래서 그런 의미에서 수상 여부와 관계없이 정말 훌륭한 학생들을 많이 볼 수 있었고 영어가 모국어가 아님에도 불구하고 자신 있게 연단해서 자기의 생각을 표현할 수 있는 멋진 연설들을 볼 수 있어서 심사위원장 패널 그리고 33인의 심사위원들은 모두 다 성공적인 대회라고 볼 수 있었을 것 같습니다. Despite the fact that this really doesn't help out in your day all the way to Gwangju, coming to engage in a variety of topics, we particularly want to applaud their sports and also willing to become graceful winners. And for that, we applaud every single one of them, despite the final records that they may have standing at this debate. So with that, I would like to Foreign Network, as well as our sponsors, such as the Embassy of the United States to Korea. So 이로써 마지막으로는 이 대회가 있게 가능하게 해주신 주최한 광주광역시, 주관해주신 호남대학교 그리고 광주영어방송, 마지막으로 주한 미국 대사관을 비롯하여 후원해주신 모든 기관에게 감사를 전달하고 있습니다. 감사합니다.
네, 본대회를 이끌어준 노혜원 심판장에게 다시 한번 감사의 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Please give another round of applause for Chief Adjudicator Haewon-ro. Thank you.
자, 그럼 본격적으로 탑 스피커 부분부터 시상을 하겠습니다. 탑 스피커 3위는 예선 전까지 개인 성적을 바탕으로 선정을 했습니다.
We will now move on to the Top Speaker Awards. We are awarding the 3 top speakers in this tournament based on accumulated individual speaker points from the preliminary rounds.
먼저 탑 스피커 3위에 대한 시상이 있겠습니다.
First, we will announce the 3rd top speaker of the High School League.
이 부분 시상은 GFN 광주 영어방송 김건우 본부장님께서 해주시겠습니다. 무대 위로 자리해 주십시오.
This award will be presented by General Director Kim Kwon-woo of the GFN Gwangju English Broadcasting Station. We would like to invite him to the stage.
탑 스피커 3위에게는 상장과 부상으로 장학금 10만 원이 수여됩니다.
The 3rd top speaker will be given award certificate and prize money in the amount of 100,000 won.
제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 탑 스피커 고등학생부 3위.
The 3rd top speaker award of the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship goes to Team Olympus.
윤지현 축하합니다. 고등부 탑 스피커 3위 윤지현. 이 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 고등학생부 탑 스피커 3위로 입상하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 광주 영어방송 사장. 축하합니다. 네, 감사합니다. 지금까지 시상을 해주신 GFN 광주 영어방송 김건우 부장님께도 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
We would also like to ask the audience to give a big round of applause to the General Director Kim Kwon-woo for his efforts.
자, 이어서 탑 스피커 부분 2위에 대한 시상입니다.
Next, we will announce the 2nd top speaker of the High School League.
네, 이 부분 시상에는 호남대학교 국제교류본부 박상영 본부장님께서 수고를 해주시겠습니다. 무대 위로 자리 부탁드립니다.
This award will be presented by Executive Director Park Sang-yeol of Honam University Office of International Affairs. We would like to invite him to the stage.
탑 스피커 2위에게는 호남대학교 국제교류본부장상과 부상으로 장학금 20만 원이 수여됩니다.
The 2nd top speaker will receive award certificate and prize money in the amount of 200,000 won.
제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 탑 스피커 부문 고등학생 2위.
The 2nd top speaker of the High School League of the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship goes to from Team Olympus.
김보아 축하합니다.
Congratulations.
고등부 탑 스피커 2위 김보아. 이 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 고등학생부 탑 스피커 2위로 입상하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 호남대학교 국제교류본부장. 축하합니다.
Congratulations.
네, 축하드리겠습니다. 네, 박상림 본부장님께서 잠깐 옆으로 자리해 주십시오.
Director Park, please wait by the stage for a moment.
자, 그럼 이제 탑 스피커 부분 1위의 시상이 있겠습니다.
Now we will announce the first top speaker of the High School League.
탑 스피커 1위에게는 영국 문화원 IELTS상 그리고 부상으로 장학금 30만 원이 수여됩니다.
Next, we will announce the top speaker of the High School League. The top speaker will receive British Council IELTS award, certificate, and prize money in the amount of 300,000 won.
이 부분 시상에는 영국 문화원장을 대신해 대회 운영위원장이신 호남대학교 박주경 교수님께서 해주시겠습니다. 무대 위로 자리해 주십시오.
The top speaker award will be presented by the director of the executive committee, Professor Park Ju-kyung.
제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 탑 스피커 부분 고등학생부 1위.
The top speaker of the High School League of the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship goes to From Team Olympus,
김재연. 축하합니다.
for Top Speaker League, first place. For outstanding skills, this certificate is awarded to Kim Jae-yeon for outstanding skills demonstrated at the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship organized by Gwangju Metropolitan City and GFN, August 18, 2016. Martin Fryer, Director, British Council, Korea.
네, 축하드립니다. 네. 자, 탑 스피커상을 받은 학생들 무대 중앙으로 함께 좀 자리를 해주시겠어요?
Would all Top Speaker Award recipients please?
네, 축하드립니다. 네, 각자 옆으로 자리해 주십시오. 고등부 8강 진출팀에 대한 시상이 있겠습니다.
First, we will give out awards for the quarter finalists.
이 부분은 계속해서 호남대학교 국제교류 박상영 본부장님께서 해주시겠습니다.
This award will be presented by the Executive Director Park. We would like to invite him back to the stage.
제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 8강.
The quarter finalists of the high school leagues are
자, 네 팀이 되겠습니다. 팀 글리서,
Team Peculiar NPY,
팀 신스틸러.
Team 그녀는 프로다.
네, 네 팀은 무대 중앙으로 자리해 주십시오. 축하합니다.
Four teams, please come to center stage.
네, 팀 그녀는 프로다, 팀 신스틸러는 부득이한 사정으로 오늘 시상식에 참석하지 못했습니다.
Unfortunately, Team Scene Stealer and 그녀는 프로다 could not attend this ceremony due to extraneous circumstances.
네, 팀 글리서부터 시상을 하겠습니다. 고등부 8강 팀 글리서 이수진, 정유정, 조윤영. 위 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 8강에 진출하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 축하합니다. 네. 팀 글리서 다시 한번 축하드립니다. 여러분 다시 한번 축하의 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 순천 강남여고 학생들이었습니다. 축하합니다. 자, 다음은 팀 Peculiar NPY 시상하겠습니다. 고등부 8강 이유빈, 박예진, 나경빈. 이 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 8강에 진출하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 축하합니다. 다들 얼굴도 아주 예쁘고요. 예, 얼굴도 예쁜 학생들이 똑똑하기까지 합니다. 예, 앞으로 미래를 짊어질 우리 4명 학생에게 박수 한번 부탁드리고요. 잘해주십시오. 이 부분은 호남대학교 총장님을 대신해서 계속해서 호남대학교 국제교류 박상영 본부장님께서 시상해 주시겠습니다. 무대 중앙으로 자리해 주십시오.
The awards will be presented by the Director Park. We would like to invite him back to the stage.
3위 두 팀에게는 각각 호남대학교 총장상 그리고 트로피, 부상으로 장학금 30만 원이 수여됩니다.
The semi-finalists will receive an award certificate from the Chief of Honam University, a trophy, and a prize money in the amount of 300,000 won.
제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 3위
The semi-finalists of the high school leagues are
팀 하이서석.
and Team Lighthouse.
축하합니다. 네, 팀 하이서석부터 그러면 시상을 하겠습니다. 고등부 3위 하이서석 신민수, 임찬우, 김문수. 위 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 3위로 입상하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 호남대학교 총장 축하합니다. 하이 서석팀은 서석고등학교 학생인 것 같습니다. 그래서 하이 서석이겠죠? 네, 다시 한번 축하합니다. 네, 다음은 팀 라이트하우스 시상하겠습니다. 고등부 3위 천지호, 송민재, 정용범. 위 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론대회 고등학생부 3위로 입상하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 호남대학교 총장 축하합니다. 네, 이 라이트하우스 팀은 등대 글로벌 학교에서 온 학생들입니다. 학교 이름이 정말 특이하네요. 등대 글로벌 학교에서 온 학생들이었습니다. 경기도에 있는 학교입니다. 예. 네, 경기도 일산에 있는 학교입니다. 네, 다시 한번 축하드립니다. 네, 우리 두 팀 잠깐 무대 앞으로 좀 자리를 해주세요.
All semi-finalist teams, please come back to the center stage for a photograph.
네, 다시 한번 여러분 우리 4강에 진출했던 중결승에 진출했던 두 팀입니다. 다시 한번 뜨거운 축하의 박수를 부탁드리겠습니다.
Congratulations. Please give a big round of applause for our high school league semi.
입니다.
Now we will present the awards for the champions and grand finalists of the high school league.
1위 팀에게는 광주광역시장상과 트로피, 부상으로 장학금 100만 원이 수여되고요. 2위 팀에게는 주한미국 대사상, 트로피, 부상으로 장학금 50만 원이 수여됩니다.
The champion will receive the Mayor Award from the Gwangju Metropolitan City Office, a trophy.
여기서 잠깐 이번 대회를 위해서 특별히 참석을 해준 주한미국 대사관 아메리칸 스페이스과의 데니엘 리 서기관님의 인사 말씀을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 무대 위로 오시겠습니다.
Let's hear a few words from American Space's director Daniel Lee.
Thank you. I will be speaking in English. I would like to extend my warm congratulations to all the winners of the 2016 Gwangju Youth English Debating Championship. Congratulations. The U.S. Embassy is proud to sponsor this championship for the 4th time, and it's good to see that it's getting larger and larger this year with 26 teams. The chief adjudicator said that participating in winning this contest does not help in college admissions, but it helps in other things, particularly I would say in life skills. By learning to debate, you learn to listen. You learn to think on your feet, and you learn confidence. So it is a good use of your time. I have a daughter. Hopefully, she will argue with her friends at school, and then she will come home and not want to argue with us. There is the problem that she will use her new debate skills at home with her parents, as well as with her friends, but that is a risk we will take. But please do not bother your parents with your new debate skills. Once again, congratulations and best wishes to all the winners today. I would like to conclude by thanking the Gwangju Foreign Language Network, the Gwangju Metropolitan City, and the university for sponsoring this event. Thank you, and again, congratulations.
네, 다시 한번 좋은 말씀 해주신 데니엘 리 서기관님께 감사의 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
Thank you for your speech.
자, 그럼 지금부터 고등학생부 1, 2위 팀의 시상을 하겠습니다.
We will now award the champions and grand finalists of the high school league.
고등부 결승에 오른 두 팀 무대 중앙으로 자리해 주십시오.
Can we please have both finalist teams come up to the center of stage?
네, 두 팀 모두 아주 열띤 토론을 보여주었죠. 어떤 팀이 우승을 할지 긴장이 됩니다. 자, 저희가 먼저 1위 팀을 발표하면 나머지 한 팀이 자동으로 2위 팀이 되겠습니다.
After we announce the champions, the other team will automatically be recognized as our grand finalists.
자, 먼저 고등학생부 1위입니다.
So first, the grand champions.
이 부분 시상은 광주광역시 장성수 대변인께서 해주시겠습니다. 무대 위로 자리해 주십시오.
The award will be presented by the spokesman Kang Sung-soo from the Gwangju Metropolitan City. We would like to invite him to the stage.
1위 팀에게는 광주광역시장상 그리고 트로피, 부상으로 장학금 100만 원이 수여됩니다.
The champion will receive the Mayor Award from the Gwangju Metropolitan City Office, a trophy, and a prize money in the amount of 1 million won.
네, 지금 그 결과의 봉투가 전달이 됩니다. 저희도 아직 결과를 모르고 있는데요. 대상 챔피언의 봉투가 와 있습니다. 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 고등학생부 1위.
The champions of the high school league of the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debate Championship.
네. 8대 1로
On 8-1 split,
팀
Olympus.
축하합니다. 네,
Congratulations.
2위 팀은 팀 라 팀이 되겠습니다. 역시 2위 팀에게도 여러분 축하의 박수 부탁드립니다.
The grand finalist is the team Ra. Please also give them a big round of applause.
네, 먼저 고등학생부 1위 팀의 시상이 있겠습니다.
We will first award the grand champions.
고등학생부 1위 김보아, 김재연, 윤지현. 위 학생은 제7회 광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 고등학생부 1위로 입상하였기에 상장을 수여합니다. 2016년 8월 18일 광주광역시장 축하합니다.
Congratulations.
네, 그다음 김재연 학생인가요? 네, 고등학생부 1위 김재연. 이하 내용은 같습니다. 축하합니다. 네, 고등학생부 1위 윤지현. 이하 내용은 같습니다. 축하합니다. 네, 100만 원의 상금이 수여되겠습니다. 축하합니다. 여러분 다시 한번 이번 우승을 차지한 올림푸스 팀 3명의 학생들에게 축하의 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Congratulations. Please give another big round of applause to the champions of the high school league.
네, 이번 대회부터는 저희가 그 해외 체력 경험이 없는 학생들을 대상으로 이 고등학생부를 이렇게 통합해서 운영을 했는데요. 용인외고 학생들입니다. 자, 그리고 제 기억으로는 중학생 때도 아마 본 대회에 나와서 또 열심히 해줬던 기억이 나는데요. 고등학생부에 와서도 좋은 결과를 얻은 것 같습니다. 축하드리고요. 계속해서 고등학생부 2위 팀의 시상이 있겠습니다.
Next, we would like to recognize the grand finalists of the high school league.
이 부분 시상에는 주한미국 대사관 아메리칸 스페이스과의 데니얼 리 사법기관께서 해주시겠습니다.
The award will be presented by the American Spaces Director Daniel Lee from U.S. Embassy Seoul. We would like to invite him up to the stage.
2위 팀에게는 주한미국 대사상과 트로피, 부상으로 장학금 50만 원이 수여됩니다.
The grand finalists of the high school league will receive U.S. Ambassador Seoul Award, a trophy, and prize money in the amount of 500,000 won. Second place winning team of the high school league. This certificate is awarded to Team Ra, Yu Yeonju, Kim Min-kyung, Woon Ka-young for outstanding skills in debate demonstrated at the 7th Gwangju Youth English Debating Championship organized by the Gwangju Metropolitan City, August 18, 2016. Mark W. Lippert, Ambassador, U.S. Embassy Seoul.
축하합니다. 자, 유연주 학생 나와주세요. 네, 유연주. 이하 내용은 같습니다. 축하합니다. 네, 김가연, 유연주, 김민경 3명의 학생이 2위를 수상했습니다. 다시 한번 축하의 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Please give another round of applause to the grand finalists of the high school league.
네, 우리 수상을 한 두 팀 잠깐 무대 중앙으로 자리를 해주세요.
Now, can the champions?
너무 상이 많아서 들기가 힘들군요. 제가 좀 도와드릴까요? 자, 예쁘게 웃어주세요. 하나, 둘, 셋. 축하합니다. 네, 수상하신 우리 모든 학생들 진심으로 축하드리고요. 마지막으로 수상자 전원의 기념사진 촬영이 있겠습니다. 우리 학생들 모두 무대 앞으로 자리해 주십시오.
Big congratulations.
네, 먼저 우승 소감 좀 부탁드릴게요.
네, 안녕하세요. 저희는 용인외고 디베이트 동아리 코기토에서 나온 팀이고요. 이렇게 호흡을 맞춘 게 올해가 처음인데 이렇게 이 정도 여름 방학 시간을 이용해서 이렇게 우승할 수 있어서 정말 기분이 좋고 또 이렇게 스피커상까지 저희 셋이 다 같이 나란히 받을 수 있어서 굉장히 좋았던 것 같아요. 그래서 기분이 굉장히 좋습니다.
축하해요.
감사합니다.
결승하면서 사실 긴장도 많이 했고 걱정도 많이 했는데 세 명에서 되게 잘 서로 도와줘서 우승했다는 생각이 들어서 되게 뿌듯하고 진짜 기분 좋습니다.
노력한 만큼 뿌듯한 결과 있는 것 같아요.
소리 들어가요?
노력한 만큼 좋은 결과가 나와서 되게 뿌듯하고 특히 또 같은 학교 친구들이랑 이제 학교 동아리에서 나오게 돼서 이렇게 좋은 결과 얻게 돼서 팀워크가 되게 좋았던 것 같아서 뿌듯해요.
이런 것들을 한번 각자 내가 이런 걸 토론해보니까 이런 부분들이 참 좋더라 하는 부분 있으면
일단 토론이라는 게 영어라는 언어를 사용해서 다른 사람을 설득하는 것에 근본이 있지만 가장 중요한 점은 굉장히 다양한 분야를 다룰 수 있다는 것 같아요. 그래서 앞서서 말씀해 주신 것도 있지만 저희가 경제, 정치, 환경, 그러니까 거의 있는 모든 분야를 다 다루면서 좀 더 폭넓게 사고를 할 수 있었고 또 원래 자기만의 색채가 있는데 디베이트를 하면은 찬성일지 반대일지 모르니까 두 팀, 양 팀 다 생각하게 되는 능력을 기르게 돼서 굉장히 사고력을 많이 기른 것 같아요. 그리고 이제 가장 중요한 거는 이걸 다른 사람에게 어떻게 설득력 있게 전달하느냐 이 점인데 살아가면서 이제 다른 사람을 설득하고 나의 생각을 알리는 것에 대해서 많이 중요성을 느낄 텐데 그런 것을 이제 이런 어릴 학업 시절부터 영어 토론을 통해서 키워갈 수 있는 것 같아서 굉장히 좋은 것 같습니다.
네, 아유, 말을 잘하네요. 두 명 부담스러워졌어요. 괜찮아요. 자기 소신껏.
저는 그 영어 토론 때문에 이제 영어 실력도 많이 늘었고 그래서 이렇게 따로 뭐 영어 공부하고 안 그래도 이제 하면서 자연스럽게 영어 실력이 는 것 같아서 그런 것도 좋았고 그리고 영어 토론하면서 제일 크게 느꼈던 게 이게 세 명이서 같이 해야 되니까 팀워크가 얼마나 중요한지 약간 느끼게 됐거든요. 그래서 이게 혼자만 잘해야 되는 게 아니라 서로 막 이제 공유도 해야 되고 도와주기도 해야 되고 그리고 상대편도 이제 존중하면서 해야 되는 거니까 약간 다른 사람이랑 협력하고 이런 걸 좀 더 많이 배울 수 있는 것 같아서 좋은 것 같아요.
네.
일단 토론이라는 게 제가 말을 하는 거를 다른 사람들한테 보여줘야 되는 거잖아요. 그게 퍼블릭 스피킹이라는 게 참 해도 되게 새롭고 항상 어렵고 항상 뭔가 발전할 그런 부분이 보이는 것 같아서 그런 걸 할 때마다 배워가는 것 같아서 되게 대회를 나갈 때마다 되게 뿌듯하다고 느끼고 있고 말하는 그런 형식뿐만 아니라 그런 내용 같은 것들도 저희가 되게 다양한 주제에 대해서 다양한 저희 약간 그런 선입견 같은 것들을 부시고 그런 다양한 접근들을 시도를 해보면서 여러 가지로 사고를 해볼 수 있어서 많이 세상에 대해서 알게 되고 또 저희를 둘러싼 많은 것들이 어떻게 이루어지고 있는지를 많이 알아가는 것 같아요.
예, 마지막으로 이제 앞으로 본인들의 뭐 꿈이나 그리고 또 혹시 주변에 선생님, 부모님, 친구들한테 하고 싶은 말 있으면 모두 다 해주세요.
저는 지금 경제를 전공하는 것을 목표로 하고 있고 후에는 미국 대학교를 졸업해서 국제통상 전문가가 되는 것이 꿈입니다. 그래서 처음에는 이제 좀 프라이빗 컴퍼니에서 좀 일도 하다가 후에는 제가 좀 더 실력을 쌓고 좀 경력을 쌓으면은 월드뱅크에서도 일할 계획을 가지고 있습니다. 그래서 저는 이런 디베이트 경험을 통해서 경제에 대해서 깊이 있게 알아가는 방법도 많이 배운 것 같아서 기분이 좋고요. 끝으로 우리 동아리에서 많이 나왔는데 저희가 매주 세션 하면서 선배들께 많은 도움을 받았거든요. 그래서 저희 동아리 선배들께도 굉장히 많이 감사를 드리고 또 저희 광주까지 같이 와주신 부모님께도 감사드리고 저희 모든 주변 사람들한테 다 감사드리는 바입니다.
저는 이제 심리학 쪽에 관심이 많아서 대학교에 가서 심리학 공부하면서 사람들이 어떤 생각을 가지고 사는지 이런 거를 공부하고 싶고요. 그리고 이제 토론을 하면서 이제 사람을 설득을 시켜야 되니까 이제 그 사람이 어떤 생각을 하는지 이런 걸 잘 분석을 해야 되는데 그런 면에서 제 관심 분야랑 약간 연관이 있었던 것 같고 그리고 저도 이제 같은 동아리에서 나왔으니까 이제 저 계속 도와주셨던 선생님이나 아니면 뭐 선배님들이나 뭐 다 어쨌든 제 토론 실력 향상에 되게 도움을 주신 것 같아서 다 감사드리고 그리고 엄마 아빠나 모두 그 가족들이 다 이제 저 영어 토론하는 거 도와주기도 하고 강좌까지 따라와주기도 하고 하니까 먹을 것도 챙겨주고 되게 감사하게 생각합니다.
우선은 저도 이제 경제 쪽에 관심이 많아서 나중에 경제를 좀 깊이 있게 공부를 해서 교수를 하고 싶어요. 그래서 그런 것들을 하는데 이제 깊이 있는 그런 사고 방식이나 그런 걸 알게 돼서 이 대회가 되게 많은 도움이 돼서 이렇게 주최해 주시고 저희가 좋은 결과를 얻을 수 있게 그런 기회를 주셔서 감사하고 아까도 계속 말했지만 저희에게 계속 가르쳐 주신 선생님들, 선배님들 감사하고 따라와 주신 어머님들 되게 감사하고 항상 도와주시는 가족들에게 감사하다는 말 전하고 싶습니다.
광주광역시 전국 청소년 영어 토론 대회 화이팅!